So if you're wondering about the beard, I'm going to tell you a story real quick. I usually grow a beard when the Cardinals are in the playoffs. St. Louis Cardinals, my favorite baseball team. So my daughter is participating in the National Gymnastics meet in Tennessee at the end of the month. So this is my good luck beard for her. Yes. And so when that's over and she wins, I will shave it. Till then, I appreciate your patience.
Good luck.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Westminster, I welcome you to our Memorial Day observance. Mr. Charles McEwen, Westminster resident and Air Force veteran, will now give the invocation.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we pause this Memorial Day weekend to remember the sacrifice the men and women made that have served our country both at home and abroad. We especially remember those men and women who gave the ultimate sacrifice to preserve the freedom we enjoy as a nation today. Our freedom is not guaranteed, but only exists because of the men and women who sacrificed so much to wear the uniform of our country. While today is set aside to honor our many veterans who gave their all to defend our freedom, we should not forget the families these servicemen and women left behind who never saw their loved ones again. We continue to ask you to watch over our military members and keep them from harm's way. We ask you to bring your healing hand to those many veterans in veterans hospitals, retirement homes, and field hospitals around the world, so that they soon may return to their normal life. Be with the families of the veterans here at Westminster that have lost their loved ones during this year. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. Those who are able may stand as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we remain standing, let us observe a moment of silence in honor of the Westminster veterans we have lost this past year, reflecting on their sacrifice and service to our nation. Please be seated. Memorial Day is a day unlike any other. Since 1868, we have come together in our communities, towns, and villages to place flowers and flags on the graves of those who have given their last full measure of devotion to our country. Today, we have gathered here to remember and honor those brave men and women who paid the ultimate price for the sake of our freedom. We know their loved ones, their wives and mothers, and their children, and the friends who shall always miss them. They have left a legacy of freedom, and they taught their children and their children's children to the value of sacrifice and work and virtue, the necessary conditions of freedom. They taught us to love our country. These soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen have become our teachers, and the words and deeds of their lives remind us of human excellence, the things for which we stand, and the courage that is necessary to maintain those things. The essence of patriotism lies in a willingness to sacrifice for one's country, just as true greatness finds expression not in blessings enjoyed, but in good bestowed. We are in their debt, and it is our duty to thank and honor them. So today we pause to reflect on what has been given and sacrificed. Let us never forget. I now again call upon Mr. John White of the Westminster Veterans Corps and the Army veteran to say a few words and also introduce our guest speaker, Charles McEwen.
Good morning, Westminster residents. I've got two tasks this morning. One of them Chuck just mentioned. Introduce the next speaker. And secondly, to talk very briefly, which I will do now, about the Westminster Veterans Court, or group as I like to call them. Now, the group meets the first Friday of every month, usually in the chapel at 10:30. Every resident is welcome. Let me say that again, every resident is welcome. Now, what do we do? Our purpose is to form a non-political camaraderie. Good word, look it up if you don't have a precise meaning. Camaraderie, to support and honor Westminster veterans. That's the short version. The bylaws have another wording. That's my version. Now, by the way, if you want one of these vests and you're a veteran here, find Ruth, she'll get you one. I just saw her give one to one of the veterans here that didn't have one. Now let me introduce Charlie McEwen, but I suspect most of you know one of the big things that I hope to do in the Veterans Group is to hear more of our stories and less films, because I think the stories are how we really get to know each other. Charlie, it's all yours.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. Before I start, I want to say I owe a big thank you to Bernie Sith and my son Joe, who helped me put this presentation together. Without their assistance, it would never happen. I will begin from the beginning. My career in the Air Force started on August 31st, 1966, when I boarded an Eastern Airlines flight headed to San Antonio, Texas, with a stop in Atlanta. Now, in those days, just like today, our connection in Atlanta was many, many hours late. When we finally got on the plane and arrived in San Antonio, they rolled up the airport and taken it away, as the airports in those days were not open all night like they are now. But it was interesting that the first time I'd ever been on a commercial airliner, first time I'd ever crossed the Mississippi River, and the first time I'd been to Texas. I certainly did not know at that time that I would be back in Texas again. When we arrived at basic training, it was like basic training for more things, except it was a little different. The first morning, the first thing they said was, y'all were told basic training lasts about 6 weeks. We're here to tell you, you probably won't even be here 4 weeks. He said, we already have the paperwork on the group coming behind you. So we went on. Now, there was a couple of things about basic training that was a little different. Texas gets a little bit warm in the summertime for some people, and this was late August, early September. But having spent my summers working in my uncle's tobacco field, it did not seem all that hot to me. However, during our PT time, we would get this siren that would go off, and we had to fall in and head back to the barracks. And they said it's too hot to be out there any longer. So the book work continued. Another thing I very well remember about basic training was being in a line and a person on each side of us with those little needle guns sticking shots in you all the way down the line. We had plenty of them in those days. It was PT in the morning normally and classes in the afternoon. After the first couple of weeks, our TIs were actually civilized people and would actually talk to you. The best thing I remember about basic training is the day we were supposed to run the obstacle course. I did not have any desire to crawl around in mud and things like that, so you can imagine how happy I was when our TI came in and said, forget it, folks, it's going to be a parade today because you guys are leaving the day after tomorrow. So we had our parade that afternoon, we got our orders the next day, and I received mine, to Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi for radio school. Now, when I went to school that first morning, I looked in this room and I expected to see a room full of radio operators and radios because that's what they told me my career field was. You can imagine my surprise when I saw a room full of typewriters, something I had never been associated with. So we all got in and they gave us our lessons and all that. Then a couple of weeks later, our instructor said, oh, by the way, let me tell you, if you cannot type 60 words a minute with less than 5 errors, you will be sent to Air Police School. My typewriting was not that good. It seemed like every time I sat down, it started typing itself, whether I wanted to type or not. But believe me, when they mentioned Air Police School, my typing speed got up real quick. And got through that. But strangely enough, in radio school, I never saw a radio. And I asked the instructor, and I said, how come all these typewriters? He said, well, you're supposed to be able to type messages you receive over the radio. I thought, well, gee, that's nice. How do you operate the radio? He said, you will learn that in time. So after that, and of course, we had to go to school 6 days a week because here again, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, get out of here because we need you on the lines. So I got my orders and I found out I was going to this wonderful place called Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, Field 3. Now, when I was in basic training, my barracks was air conditioned. When I was in tech school, my barracks were air conditioned. This is what I found when I got to Field 3 in Eglin. I only had about 40 roommates. We had 20 of us on each floor, no air conditioning. And my group, except for 3 of us, were all from the motor pool. So you can imagine what we talked about then. Nothing had anything to do with what I was familiar with. We did have a chance to go TDY one time, and I'm only showing this picture to you only because I want to show you what they gave. I don't know if you can see it now, but that thing on top of that 6x, that is a radio van. That's what they showed me when I first got to Eglin Air Force Base. Now, when we went up, we had a place called The Hill, which is really just a small rise in the ground in northwest Florida. But we went up there and there were about 20, 22 radio operators, 2 radios. The only thing with the radios was do radio checks out every now and then. But the one thing nice about it, they had an outstanding volleyball court and 2 of the best horseshoe pits I had ever played in. Now, I was a pretty good country horseshoe pitcher from playing at church picnics and all that, so as long as you won, you didn't have to do anything else. So I won a lot of horseshoe games. But every now and then, it's so hot in Florida, you beg for a chance to go sit in that air-conditioned radio van for a while. And not too long after I got there, our instructor came up and said, I need some volunteers to work the Mars station. Boy, my hand shot up like that, even though they tell you not to volunteer, except I knew something. Some of my neighbors were ham radio operators, and they let some of us guys watch them do their ham transmissions, and they worked with the Mars station, so I knew exactly what that was. There was only one problem. 4 of the guys volunteered that outranked me. I said, well, slim chance, but I tried. Next day, our instructor came and he said, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you all something. The shift is 3 to 11, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. The volunteers suddenly disappeared. Believe it or not, the 4 guys ahead of me were all married and had families, and they did not want to be away from home at night. So that was great for me. I got to go to the Mars station. I really did enjoy it, but for those of you who have been in the service, back in those days, you know, when you had a thunderstorm, you shut down all the radios. And sometimes you didn't bring them back up. My net control station was Panama City, Florida. Panama City, Florida has a lot of spring thunderstorms, even more so than we did in northwest Florida. So every time they had a thunderstorm down there, they shut us down. And most of the time said, don't bother to come back up, just call it a day. That was very nice. So, but it also gave me an opportunity to pick up a correspondence course from Florida State University, which I could work on the radio room because that was a quiet place around. I worked there for quite a few months, and I got to know the mess sergeant and the chow hall real well. In fact, some of the times he would come over in the radio room, bring fresh chocolate chip cookies and chocolate milk, and tell me his war stories. He'd been in the Air Force well over 20 years and had been all over the world, so it was very interesting to hear him. And we went on like this for a while. Then I got a note one day. I came to work and there was a guy sitting in my chair. He said, "You're to report to headquarters right away." So I trudged on down to headquarters. The guy says, "Go on in." I went into this room. It was full of officers. I said, "Uh-oh, whose call did I screw up this time?" And they said, "We're going to make this very simple. Have you ever been in jail? Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Have you ever had a speeding ticket? Do you know any reason why you can't get a top secret security clearance?" I said, "Wait a minute, what is that?" I had never heard of that. And I said, "I don't think so." "Fine, dismissed." So I stepped out in the hall. My friend Dave Straka was there. Dave and I knew each other, but we worked on opposite shifts, so we never saw each other. He went in, same situation with him. A couple of weeks went by, never heard anything. Another week went by. Then I got instructions, report to the head shed. So I went down there again. They said, "You're leaving here. You're being transferred to the Tactical Air Warfare Center." I said, "Oh." I said, "Where's that?" He said, "You know that Quonset hut down the end of the street with the armed guard in front of it? That's where you'll be working." I said, "Oh man, that's just right down from the barracks. This is going to be nice." So they said, "Okay, you report there first thing in the morning. Here's your paperwork." So I went in. I went up to the guard the next morning. He let me in. Went in. Had a nice air-conditioned radio room, a nice-looking console radios and all that. And our NCOC was a really nice guy. And I said, "This is nice, you know, I just live 2 barracks up." He said, "Oh, let me tell you something. We're not associated with the 729th Squadron. You're going to have to go live on main base." So I said, "Well, that's nice. How do I get there?" He says, "Oh, there's a bus stop right outside the barracks. He'll pick you up every morning and bring you in." I said, "Okay, that doesn't sound too bad." So they moved. He had a car pick us up, moved all our stuff to main base, but they put us way down at the end of the barracks on the corner. There wasn't anybody around us. He said, "This is your room. You don't need to be talking to anybody around here anymore, and you don't mention where you work, and you don't mention what you do." Okay. And I said, and he said, "The bus stop is right out there." Dave was my roommate. We came together. They even had a refrigerator, small refrigerator, put in our room for us. And went back the next day. They said, "By the way, a couple of things. We don't have anybody working here below E4, so you're all automatically being promoted to E4. That was nice, which meant we were on separate rations, and he also had a housing allowance. So I said, "Hey, this thing is getting pretty good here." I had been dating Judy for a while. I said, maybe with this extra money we can afford to get married. So not too long after that, I asked her to marry me, and she agreed. With her father put a few restrictions on that. Number one, she had to finish college and graduate. And number two, I had to agree to let her come back home to walk across the stage to get her diploma. That was not a big problem. Now back to our work. We got to work. They said, "Now listen, there's going to be people coming behind you. There'll be high-ranking military people, generals, admirals, bunch of high-ranking civilians. There are going to be congressmen and senators. You are to pay them no attention. You just keep on doing your work." And sure enough, they came in by the droves. Evidently, Secretary McNamara had really done a job on selling this project to not only the military, but to Congress as well. One little incident that happened, I'll share with you. One morning, I got there early. Well, before that, they asked us one day, do you guys drive a school bus? Well, I said, yeah, I'd driven one in college. I drove the church bus on many of our church outings. So they said, "Okay, you're going to become bus drivers." Okay, so Dave and I went to bus driver school. We became bus drivers, and we went through the officers and high-ranking NCO area, picked them up in the mornings and took them to work and brought them on at evening. Now, that was not a really bad job, because their wives took really good care of us, made sure we had cakes and cookies and all that kind of stuff. So that was not bad duty at all. Really enjoyed it. One morning, since we drove the bus, and actually we were the first people there, so after a couple mornings of making the coffee, it was decided I was going to make the coffee from now on. So one morning I'm in the latrine, washing out the coffee pot, cleaning it all up, not paying too much attention. I look over my right and there's a one-star gentleman cleaning out a coffee pot and getting ready to make coffee. I said, "Oh, excuse me, sir, let me do that. You shouldn't be do that." He said, "No, son, you don't understand. In my shop today, I'm the lowest ranking officer, so I get to make the coffee." So that gives you an idea of the kind of staff we had over there. We enjoyed our time there. We lived in Crestview, Florida, had a nice apartment and 5 apartments hooked together. All 5 of us worked at the same place. Judy and I were the only 2 that didn't have any children, so we got to enjoy plenty of other children. And we could also be sure of one thing: our weekends were free, because that was the time they used to repair the radios, repair the radar, and repair the airplanes. So we were pretty much sure of having our weekends off. After about a couple of months, we found out now things are going to start changing. You may go to work at midnight, you may go to work at 2 o'clock in the morning, you may go to work at 4 o'clock in the morning, you may go to work at 8 o'clock, you just go to work whenever we call you. Okay, that wasn't too bad. And I really enjoyed it. That was one of my better tours. And then I sent Judy home to walk across the stage and get her diploma. And during the time she was gone, I got orders for Vietnam. About that time, they decided Secretary McNamara project was not going to work. You know, he left, and so, I mean, within days of his departure, things started shutting down in a hurry. I was with a bunch of guys in there. They got Hawaii, they got Germany, they got Spain, they got Japan. I got Vietnam. So we packed up, moved back to North Carolina, because we had been promised with this project that we're all going to go to Thailand, families and everything. They had a place for us over there. We were going to go to Thailand and it would be really nice. Well, didn't quite work out that way. So we moved back to North Carolina, and I waited there about 30 days, kissed Judy goodbye, and I got on a plane for Vietnam. We had been married exactly 6 months, or just a little bit more than 6 months. And here we are. We landed at Benoit, and I checked in like you're supposed to. And by the way, in between the time we shut down, I got time Vietnam. McNamara promoted all of us again. So by now I was an E5. I got over there and the guy says, "We don't have any places for an E5 here." I said, "Well, you know what? That TWA hadn't left yet. I could easily get back on and go back to the States." They said, "You know, it doesn't quite work that way here." I said, "Okay." I said, "But really, what am I supposed to do?" He said, "You know, I really don't know." He said, "Let me see, you got a place to stay?" I said, "Yeah, they showed me where I'm going to be staying." He said, "Well, why don't you just stay there and you know where you're eating?" I said, "Yeah, I know where. Why don't you just go back and forth and we'll figure out something." Well, I got to the barracks and the guy said, "Look, it's not too good tonight. You better be prepared for an attack tonight." I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Just crawl under your bed tonight. We'll show you everything else tomorrow." Sure enough, a rocket hit right across the street that night, demolishing the building across the street. My bed lifted right up off the floor and came right back down. That was not a pleasant awakening to Vietnam. So this happened. I was doing this now for a good 2 weeks, still walking back and forth, morning and night. And I was walking through one day and this guy comes up. I hear this guy, "Hey, Mac! Hey, Mac!" Wait a minute, nobody knows me over here. Who's calling my name? So he came up, touched me on the shoulder, and I turned around. It was one of the guys I trained stateside. He said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Better question, what are you doing here? Are you supposed to be in Thailand?" He said, "Not anymore, that's gone." I said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm walking from there to there 3 times a day." He said, "Are you looking for something to do?" I said, "Well, I guess kind of, sort of." He said, "Well, I'm working for the 834th Air Division in Tan Son Nhut. We take care of airlift." He said, "We just lost a crew the other day. Their plane was shot down as they were leaving Pleiku, and we lost everybody on board. And so we're going to need some replacements." He said, does that interest you? I said, well, I don't know, maybe so. So he said, well, let me put your name in. So a couple of days later, I got a call, and First Sergeant said, Matt, do you know General so-and-so? You know Colonel so-and-so? No, sir, I've never heard of him. Why do you ask? He said, well, I got a letter here requesting you be transferred to their division. I said, well, I don't know him, sir. He said, well, do you want it? I said, well, I know somebody there. He said, would you like to go? If you go, he said, I just need to put my signature right here and it's all done. I said, okay, that's fine. So I did, and they said, a man will be here to pick you up tomorrow in a Jeep. Sure enough, Dan was there to pick me up, and we went over to a place called Bearcat. You look up there, you'll see it. That was the Army's name for it. The Air Force called it L'Enfant North, because that's what you named their airfield. And we went through the countryside getting there to buy some rice paddies with Papa San plowing with his water buffalo, the rice paddies. And I get to a place that says 9th Infantry Division. That doesn't sound like the Air Force to me. So when they said, oh, by the way, I meant to tell you something. There's two of you. There'll be you and an officer. Your officer is already gone. He's rotated back to station. And I'm leaving next week, so you better be a fast learner. So I said, well, I think I could do pretty well. These are some of the, and he said, by the way, we're going to close down here. We're going to move to Dongtan. Now, let me back up a minute. Dongtan is the red out there, so we had to move from green to red, which is a little better than 100 miles. And they said, we're going to put you in a convoy, an Army convoy moving down there. It'll be pretty well guarded, so you don't have to worry. You won't have anybody riding with you. You'll be by yourself. I said, not too sure about this. Well, I also got a letter to I got a phone call saying, don't worry, you're going to be on an airplane. We're not letting our radio Jeep go down some road where somebody might steal it. So one interesting thing that happened at Bearcat. One night I came in and the guy in charge says, do you have a ration card? I said, yes, of course I do. Do you smoke? No, I don't smoke. Can I borrow your ration card? I started saying, why does he want one? His ration card's good for more cigarettes than he could possibly smoke. I said, okay. He said, we'll explain everything later. I said, okay. So I went on to work and everything, came back that night. I smelled steaks cooking on the grill. And he said, hurry up and get ready. We're ready to eat. I was always the last one back because my airfield was clean on the other side of the post. So he said, now I guess you want to know, here's your ration card back. I guess you want to know why I want it. I said, we have been curious about that all day long, as a matter of fact. He said, well, you know, he worked in intelligence. He said, I worked with the Royal Korean Army. And he said, the United States gives them fantastic food, steak, lobster, and all that. They don't like that. But they really like Salem cigarettes. So what I do is I collect ration cards and I fill up on Salem cigarettes and drive over there and they fill me up with steak and lobster. So, and he said, by the way, we have a hooch maid here that cooks for us 3 nights a week. So things were looking pretty good over there. That didn't sound like such a bad tour of duty. Well, the time came to move to to Dongtan. These are just some pictures I took out of the plane going to Dongtan. As you'll notice, there's water everywhere because we were down in the Delta, so there's plenty of water there. This upper left-hand corner is the air shot of Dongtan, the new base I was going to. The picture in the lower left is a forward fire base that the Army used. I'll explain more about that later. And these are just shots I took out of the plane. Not very good pictures, I'll admit, but the plane windows aren't all that good, so I took some pictures out of it. This is my radio Jeep. You can notice the headlights had already been shot out. There's a hole in the windshield. And I was hoping that had all been finished before I moved there. So this is what it looked like when I got it. And believe it or not, it was my Jeep. Because it had all the radio gear in it, so without the Jeep, you couldn't operate the radio. This is our barracks at Dontam, and note in the center, of course that's Vargas in the center, but notice how high the sandbags are piled on the side. On the inside, our beds were below the sandbags. So supposedly, if anything hit there, it wouldn't be a direct hit on where we were. And you notice that the barracks are 2 stories. Well, the Air Force had 1 barracks. We had our intelligence people, or the Army, people that did intelligence for the Army. We had our weather people. We had our forward air control maintenance people that worked on the forward air controlled aircraft. And I had a maintenance man to take care of my Jeep and the radios. More importantly, the radios than the Jeep. And there was about 10 of us there. And upstairs we had a pool table, a TV, refrigerators, all the necessities of life up there. So it really was not bad. Those Connexes that you see aligned there had all our gear in it. Parts for the airplanes, parts for the Jeep, parts for the radio, everything we might need. Vargas, I had his picture there because he's the guy responsible for taking care of my Jeep and my radio. Really smart guy. His English was not very good, but he was really a smart guy. A couple of interesting things happened to me while I was there. First of all, I got to work with the air crews. My job, my title, this is where this comes in, Tactical Airlift Liaison Airman. We were a pair, officer and myself. It took months before I finally got the officer with me, but our job was to manifest people leaving and coming in. I had 2 squadrons that I worked with. My first squadron was out of Cam Ranh Bay. My second squadron was out of Vung Tau. The Vung Tau guys I got to know a lot better than the Cam Ranh Bay guys, but anyway, they were there. The Cam Ranh Bay guys flew back and forth to Benoit. That's where we brought people into country and out of country. The Vung Tau people flew to Saigon. That's where we sent the R&R people. Once a week I had a prisoner of war plane come in. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. And twice a week we had a medical evacuation plane come in. That was the hardest plane I ever saw come in because we were loading people on stretchers. They only had 1 leg, some of them only 1 arm, bandages all over them. It was not a pleasant sight. And we had that flight come in twice a week, sometimes 3 if the area was hot. We'd had a lot of casualties. We had a plane come in 3 times a week. Back to the prisoner of war plane. Came in one day, 1 loadmaster on it. 25, 30 prisoners were loaded on. He just had a saddle. He didn't have his N16 with him or anything. So he was standing around talking. I went up to him. I said, I noticed you don't have your M16 with you. He said, man, I don't need it. No problem. I said, no problem? You got a plane load of prisoners of war and it's no problem? He said, absolutely not. I never have a problem. I said, can you explain that to me? He said, oh, very simple. We take off, I open the back door halfway and I do this. He said, I never have a problem. He said, because if they weren't, that meant they were going out the back door while we were in the air. Never had a problem. I had a lot of interesting people I took things to. I had a chance one time, this is a picture of a C-7. One time I had a crew come in and they wanted to, need to go to the PX for something. I said, sure, take my Jeep, no problem. So while they're gone, I went to the loadmaster. I said, I want to watch you refuel a plane. Oh man, no problem, come on. So we went up, he showed me how to turn it on and figure how much gas we need in each wing. Opened the hatch on the cockpit, we went out on the wings, went out, loaded up the fuel and everything, came back. By the way, these pictures of me on the plane were taken by the guys at Control Tower. They used to do all sorts of things to me. And so the next time they came in, I did the same thing. Now I got the same air crews, same 3 or 4 air crews all the time. Especially after a couple of weeks when I asked them, I said, would y'all like to take the Jeep to go to lunch and I'll refuel the plane? You will refuel the plane? I said, sure, I would love to. Okay. So they took the Jeep and went on and I refueled the plane. And once you refuel it and everything, you always go into the wing, take a little sample, lay it on the cargo door so the pilot can look at it, make sure he doesn't see any water in it, so he doesn't have to worry about water getting in his engine. By the way, these were not turboprops, these are the old propeller planes, and pure aviation gas was absolutely necessary to keep them flying. So we did it. Now, if you look at the next picture here, you'll see that a C-7 does not have a great deal of room to put stuff in it. If we want to haul cargo, we use the rollers in it to carry passengers. We fold the seats down. We always left the rollers on the floor because you never knew when you would have to carry cargo. And it was no trouble to walk on. These were all young guys getting on the plane, so there was no problem about not having an accident on the rollers. So one day I was working. It was a Thursday, fairly slow afternoon. This young Army lieutenant comes up. He said we had a little shed where he said, "Where's Mac?" So they said, "He's over there." So he walked over there. He said, "Can we talk outside a minute?" I said, "Sure." I wonder what's so important about that. So he said, "It's been a tough week in Makwa," which was about an hour and 15 minutes west of where I was. He said, "We were overrun." He said, "We took in a lot of casualties, and we spent most of the week calming this place down. He just is calm now, and I'd like to have a party for the men there." Okay. He said, "But I'd like to send some beer out there." He said, "Do you think you can send some beer out there?" I said, "Whoa, I wonder what the regulations are regarding that." So I said, "Well, there are two things we'll have to do. I said, "First, you got to go ask Major Goss if it's legal for me to do that." He was my supervisor now. And I said, "Second thing is, I got to find out if I got an air crew that A, can go there, and B, would not mind going there." So when the plane came in next time, I went in to pilot. I said, "By the way, do you know who my air crew is going to be on Saturday?" They said, "You're looking at them." I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, how would you like to fly a plane load of beer out to Makwa?" "Bring it on." So I said, "Okay." The lieutenant came back. I said, "What Major Goss said?" He said, "This is your airfield. Whatever you say goes." I said, "Okay, looks like we're going to make this happen." I said, "There's one thing I need to. You've got to get me your absolutely best forklift driver, because I don't want any holes in the side of the plane." He said, "That's no problem." So I said, "Okay, bring on the beer. About 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon, bring it to me and we'll get it out of here." He did. It was there. And we loaded it all up. Now, you know, we're taking beer out to the troops, and you think, well, probably not a whole lot of beer, right? 3 pallets of beer. Each pallet holds 100 cases. Each case holds 24 cans. So you can figure how much beer we sent. So we loaded it up, got the plane ready. I got to help them tie it down, something I'd never done before, was tie cargo down. I learned how to do that. That came in handy many years later when I was tying desks down in a truck to haul to our branch offices. Anyway, we got it in, got ready to go, and I said, "Well, I'll see y'all." He said, "Oh, Matt, come on with us. You got nothing to do." Well, I knew I could go because I had blanket TDY orders. I could go anywhere in the world I wanted to go. All I had to do was hop a plane. So I said, "Okay, I'm not doing anything for the next couple hours." So I went with them. We got out to Makwa. We unloaded, no problems. Took off. The co-pilot gets out of his seat, comes back where I'm sitting. He says, "Hop up there, Mac." So oh boy, so I got to do something I wanted to do my entire life. So I got up there, got strapped in. The pilot says, "Okay, Mac, it's yours." He said, "You're flying us back." He said, "I'll show you what to do." So I had my dream come true. I always wanted to be an Air Force pilot, but I had to put on glasses, and that killed me in those days. So that was an interesting trip back. I really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun, and that's where that picture came from, where Charlie can fly a plane. This is the man I worked with, Major Goss. After he left Vietnam, he became a lieutenant colonel. This picture is taken at Cam Ranh Bay, and the bottom picture is taken at Phan Rang. Every 2 months, we tried to get together as a group just to discuss problems, issues, and things like that. I unfortunately did not get to make all those trips because for me it meant I had to fly to Saigon, change planes, fly to Cam Ranh Bay, or Van Ryn, which was okay. But coming back usually meant I had to spend the night in Saigon, which I did not like to do. They kept shooting at planes at Saigon, and I did not care to be there. So, but it was really nice. We enjoyed it. I can't tell you what a great guy Major Goss was to work with. He tried his best to get me to go to Japan, Australia, Thailand, Philippines, Australia, but we were saving the money so we could buy a house when we got back. I could not afford to make those kind of trips, and Judy certainly couldn't afford to join me. So we saved up for our R&R in Hawaii in late June of my year over there. Vietnam also, we also celebrated Christmas in Vietnam. The guys at Vung Tau painted the nose of this plane before they came on Christmas Day. Yes, we worked on Christmas Day. And the guys in the control tower insisted on coming down and taking my picture beside this plane. So they did. The other pictures of Christmas tree Judy made me and sent me for Christmas. So I had it on the little table outside my bed. She was even crafty in those days. Was everything great at Dongtan? Not quite. This is what happened one morning before I got to work. This is the POL dump they hit, and the stuff they shattered. The shrapnel flew all over and around the place where I normally would be working. But fortunately, I hadn't gone to work yet. And you can see that what happened to that. And our fire department at that time consisted of Vietnamese. So it took 4 airplanes to bring enough foam back in to replace what they used to put out that fire. Now, some of you who are veterans heard Dave Heffert make his presentation on the Riverine Force in Vietnam. They were part of the Navy. They were stationed on the other side of our base. Dave was there a year before I got there. On our anniversary, in 1969, they hit our ammo dump, and it blew up everything. These are pictures of where the Navy men lived when that hit, and you can see it's nothing but total destruction. We lost a lot of men that night. And you see the top left is a picture of one of their helicopters that was sitting there. There's just nothing left of it. It was really a sad day. We were very sorry to hear that. I was asked if I could airlift some stuff in for some of them. I managed to be able to get air crews, pick up some stuff and brought it in. And Navy was so appreciative, they said, we would like to take you on one of our boats. So I went out with them. This is a picture of some of the boats. This top picture is a picture of a boat spraying napalm, and that's the boat they took me on, one like that. They put flak vest on me, hard helmet on, made me stand on the other side of the boat while they were doing this. They said, we're going to clean the canal behind your airstrip. They said, you've been standing up on the wings of those airplanes, and right over that wall is the jungle, and they could easily pick you off one at a time. I figured that was a nice secure area, nothing to worry about. That place is no ways near secure. So they showed me the boat, and I'm telling you, if you've never seen napalm shot like that, you wouldn't believe it. You'll have a twig standing like this. There's nothing there. No stems, no nothing. It is completely gone. And anything that gets in the way of that is gone. And it's just unbelievable what it'll do. Quite a day. Well, we got on into the spring, things got a little hotter, and then it cooled down, and they said, okay, we're going to turn security over to the soldiers of the Republic of Vietnam. Uh-oh. I'd seen their air crews, I had seen their firefighters. Wasn't too sure about their security. So I got back from R&R. I had a note saying, get on a plane and get out of there. We want our radio van. Okay. So I got on the plane, flew to Benoit. They picked me up, took me to Long Binh. And here I had the most dangerous job I had in my entire career. I wanted to go to the radio room and talk to all the people I've been talking to these years. They said, I said, I got a top secret security clearance. Yeah, but you don't need to know what's going on in there. Okay. But we have a job for you. We want you to drive the colonel to Saigon 3 times a week to see his girlfriend. I said, what? I said, Saigon? Yeah. He'll go with you and show you how to get there. So I go there. Now that's not a nice 4-lane highway, service station, really nice. But when you get in near Saigon, you have stoplights. When you have a stoplight, all these little motor scooters come up the side. You don't know if they're carrying bombs, rifles, or what, and there you are in your Jeep. That was the most dangerous job I ever had. I was scared to death every time I went there that I would never come back. I did, and finally after about 6 or 7 trips, my commanding officer said, wait a minute, this has got to stop. You don't need to be doing that. You're too short to be making trips like that. Fine with me. So they said, it was getting close. I put in to go home early so I could start school, and they granted my request. I got ready to go, and I went over to Benoit, which is where I had to fly home from. And I checked in with the guys I knew at the station that put people on planes and all that. They said, hey, Mac, what are you doing here? I said, guess what, guys? I'm going home in about 3 days. They said, you're going home today. I said, we got a seat this afternoon. You're going home today. So that's the best airplane you'll ever see if you're in Vietnam. That's your Freedom Bird to take you home. This is a Braniff. I flew TWA, but I happened to be on the flight line in time to catch this picture of a Braniff. So that was it. It flew me back to Travis Air Force Base. I called a Delta to Dallas, to Atlanta, to Raleigh. And Judy picked me up from there. And I had orders for the 21st Aeromedical Evacuation Squadron at Pope Air Force Base, North Carolina. 70 miles from Judy's home and 100 miles from mine. So briefly, I'll share my time with you there. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed Pope. That was during the time they were testing the C-5A, so we got to ride on that as dummy patients for the evacuation squadron every now and then. It was a wonderful tour duty in the Air Force. I enjoyed it, but when I got ready to, they had these people come by and try to get you to re-enlist and all this kind of stuff. And I said, he said, do you have better plans? I said, well, I plan to go to school. Smartest thing you'll ever do, because we have orders for you back to Vietnam. I said, you gotta be kidding me. Nope. And he said, guess what? You get to go to survival school and M16 school before you go. I said, wait a minute. Did I just not come back from a year over there with no survival school, no M16 school, but I have to have it to go back? That does not sound like an Air Force job to me. That sounds like I'm going to be stationed with the Army again. So long, folks. I'll see you later. Thank you so much. Sergio here to sit yours down. I'll let you connect that back up.
Thank you, Mr. McCune, for sharing your service memories with us. We will now watch a brief video presentation.
Each year on the last Monday of May, America pauses. The flags fly at half-mast. The grills are fired up and families gather. But behind the long weekend lies a solemn tradition, Memorial Day, a day of remembrance, a day of honor. Memorial Day began in the aftermath of the American Civil War, the deadliest conflict in U.S. history. communities both north and south began holding springtime tributes to honor the fallen, laying flowers and reciting prayers. It was first known as Decoration Day. In 1868, General John A. Logan called for a nationwide day of remembrance. On May 30th of that year, flowers were placed on the graves of Union and Confederate soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery. After World War I, Memorial Day was expanded to honor all Americans who died in military service. Through the wars of the 20th century, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the tradition grew deeper, more national in scale. In 1971, Congress declared Memorial Day a federal holiday observed on the last Monday in May, ensuring a 3-day weekend. But the meaning remained unchanged: sacrifice, service, memory. Across the country, communities gather for Memorial Day parades, honoring fallen soldiers from every generation. Scouts and volunteers place American flags on graves in military cemeteries. At 3 p.m. local time, a national moment of remembrance asks all Americans to pause in silence to reflect on the true cost of freedom. Symbols speak when words fall short. The red poppy, inspired by the poem In Flanders Fields, is worn in remembrance. The folded flag, the final honor for many who served. The battlefield cross, a silent, solemn tribute. Memorial Day is not a celebration of war. It's a celebration of those who bore its burden and gave everything. To some, Memorial Day may seem like just the start of summer, a weekend for barbecue, shopping, and travel. But for veterans, Gold Star families, and countless Americans, it means far more. It's a sacred day, a time to honor lives lost, not just with silence, but with gratitude. A time to ask not just what we're doing for the weekend, but who we're remembering. They are sons and daughters, fathers, mothers, friends, Americans. From Bunker Hill to Baghdad, from Normandy to Kandahar, they gave all. This Memorial Day, remember them, speak their names, share their stories, honor their legacy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vitale. Thanks to all of the witnesses. We'll now have...
We will now observe a moment of silence as we listen to taps played by Major Shelley Hood of the Salvation Army. I now once again call upon Westminster resident and Air Force veteran Charles McEwen to deliver the benediction.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we commend to your gracious care and keeping all the men and women of our armed forces and their families at home and abroad. Watch over them day by day with your heavenly grace. As we leave here today, may we never forget the tremendous sacrifice they have made for our great country. God bless America. Amen.
All gave some gave all. Let us always remember. Thank you for attending this Memorial Day observance. God bless you all, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you all.